Well, here's the question. Was it really a runaway Toyota? The troubled car maker is set to release result of a technical investigation today. This after the now infamous Prius problem in San Diego. Hybrid owner James Sykes calling 911, claiming his car was approaching 100 miles per hour and he couldn't stop it. This is how Sykes described the incident last week.
I just stayed on the brakes as much as I could until finally they started smelling really bad, and I had metal sounds coming in the car.
And now a congressional memo is casting some doubt on his story as mechanics insist they can't find anything wrong with his car. William Lajeunesse is joining us live now from Los Angeles. Hi, William. What's Toyota expected to say today?
Well, you know, Uma, when you've gone to the mechanic and you've complained about a rattle under the hood or squeaky brakes and they say, we couldn't find anything, well, that's really what this is about, only the stakes and the stage, of course, are much bigger. Toyota has scheduled a press conference for 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 East Coast, when they're expected to say that their investigation, that they could not replicate the situation that you've just described and that we heard on that 911 tape of the runaway Prius going 30 miles, over 90 miles per hour, and that they are casting doubt on the driver's story. According to a California congressman who basically he was there to witness this investigation, which did include Toyota and federal investigators, that they tested the car, and when they pressed on the brake and the accelerator simultaneously, that's something called a brake override, that the car shut down. That is a feature that is on the Toyota Prius, not on the Camry or the Avalon or some of the other cars that are being recalled over this situation. But it basically says that they could not make this happen. The attorney for Sykes, the 61-year-old who drove this vehicle, is saying, listen, this is a ghost in the machine. Just because you couldn't replicate the situation doesn't mean it didn't exist. That, number one, the guy didn't have a motive to make it up, that he's not planning to file a lawsuit, that he's declined national interviews, and that this guy is telling the truth. And you heard the 911 tape. It sounds that way. On the other hand, there's been information that's come up that may cast doubt on this guy's character. That's what the status of this press conference is scheduled later for today.
It's all very interesting because, as you pointed out, he's not planning to sue Toyota, and he's hired an attorney, which leads us to some questions about why. And also the nature of this federal investigation. Where does that stand?
Well, you know, it would have been easy to potentially dismiss this guy's story if Toyota wasn't already under investigation for this problem dating back to 2000. I believe there have been 53 fatalities since the year 2000 and over 2,000 complaints into NHTSA, the federal government, in the last decade, which have alleged this sudden acceleration product involving Toyota products. As I mentioned, the Avalon and the Camry, both the Lexus ES and the IS, and it's also been extended now to the Tacoma and the Sienna. So at this point in time, that investigation, that recall is happening, but when it comes to the Prius, they're saying that this could not have occurred. Uma?
All right, William Lajeunesse, thank you for bringing us up to date on this very controversial story.
So we're trying to figure this out, right? Investigators saying the problem Mr. Sykes had is both mechanically and electronically impossible. Is that the case? Lauren Fix is the car coach, and Lauren's back with us today. You were here last week, and welcome back here. Now, what's your theory? What do you think happened?
Well, it's hard to make conclusive answers. I mean, we can easily make statements. I hear the definite doubts. I mean, we don't know a couple things that has not been addressed. First off, as I've been working in the brake industry since the early 80s and into the 70s, and I can tell you that first thing I'd want to know as a brake expert is, did someone look at these brakes the last time he brought it in for service? He claimed it was in for service just prior to this situation happening. If that's the case, what did they do? What didn't they do? Or did they not even touch the brakes? If that's the case, they never touched the brakes, well, then the brakes are worn out, and he had a brake problem to begin with. But interestingly enough, the NHTSA people, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, were able to make the engine shut down, which is not typical of a regular car, but typical of a hybrid. When the accelerator's fully down, you can step on the brakes and it would shut the engine down. So it did work on this car. So there's a lot of doubts. But then on the other hand, he's not looking for anything monetary, and he's turning down national interviews.
Give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, it's 90 miles an hour. He's on the freeway east of San Diego. Maybe the guy just freaked out. You know, despite, actually, before you answer that, roll this clip from the 911 tape, and I'll ask you to address that specifically.
Okay.
What are you doing over 90?
You're over 90?
Yeah, oh, hold on.
Do you
My
have
brakes are almost burned out.
Okay, are you in cruise control? Sir, if you can hear me, you need to press your ignition button and hold it down. Can you hear me? Sir?
So he addresses the brakes himself on that tape, Lauren. He says, my brakes are almost burnt out. And the 911 operator was clearly giving instructions on what to do. I mean, maybe this is a guy who just had so much going on. It was sensory overload, and he was trying to save his own hide. What do you think?
True, he could have had his cruise control on. We don't know that. Why didn't he put the car into neutral on a Prius? There's a couple different, depending on the year, you can hold it in neutral, and if you hold it there for about 5 seconds, it will click in. You can actually place some vehicles in neutral depending upon what you're driving in year and so forth. But he didn't. The 911 operator was right on the money. She said, "Put the car in neutral," and he didn't respond with, "I'm busy trying to drive the car." But he had no fear of putting his hand supposedly on the steering wheel and trying to lift up the pedal with the other. That's a little bit of a dangerous risk when neutral is something as simple as placing the shifter. So there's a lot of doubt here. There's a lot of misinformation, and we don't know if what he was saying is true. Maybe. I mean, there's been 50-some deaths.
Lauren,
Yeah.
do you think this was a hoax on his part?
He seems that there's no gain. That's the only thing. I mean, if he was, talking to Oprah or The View or, one of these other, or some website was offering him some money or a book opportunity, but we're not hearing any of that. But the only thing I have big doubt is, why would you hire an attorney unless he's actually getting threats and attacks? So that's the only thing that seems odd to me. But to me, he does have a case, but then everything that points from what Toyota's looking at, National Highway Traffic is looking at, engineers are looking at, looks like it's possible that he didn't know what he was doing.
You know what the government said? It hasn't been able to determine what the issue was here. Now just the final question. You heard William LaGenese's report before we came to you. Is it unusual not to be able to duplicate a reaction in a garage or in a lab when you're trying to power shoot something like this?
No, and in reality, it is true that it's really hard to, if it's electromagnetic interference, it's going to be extremely difficult to reproduce. If it's a software problem, it may never come up again. It's sort of like when you're on a cell phone in your kitchen and you stand in that same spot all the time and you drop a call and you can't figure out why, and it never happens again. It's just the way it is. It's a ghost. And if that happens, that's unusual. Is the problem with the Prius? I think we need more details. I'd like to hear what Toyota has to say this afternoon, and I'd also like to take a look at that service report from the last Toyota service that he had done.
Yeah, also what William said there, that there was excessive wear on those brake pads. Whether or not they were down to the bone or down to the rims, we don't know. But okay, we'll hear more later. Lauren,
the backers, actually, but yeah.
Sorry?
Thank you. The backers, they're backers that are behind it. The material wears down, they go down to the backers. But we'll find that out as we investigate further. There is doubt.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren Fix.
Thank you.